Skyrim is full of choices that feel like they matter, but some of them are straight up traps. From sacrificing a loyal follower for absolutely nothing, to selling a quest item you'll desperately need later, to siding with a faction that secretly helps your worst enemy win. Today, I'm breaking down every single worst decision you can make in Skyrim and why each one burns. Starting with a choice that punishes you for being a good person. Choosing the sapling. Here's the thing about the Blessings of Nature quest. It wants you to believe you're making a meaningful moral choice. You're not. The setup is simple. Danica Purespring asks you to restore the Gildergreen, that big dead tree in the middle of Whiterun that everybody walks past without caring about. She tells you about Nettlebane, a dagger that can cut into the sacred Eldergleam tree to harvest its sap. Only problem? It's in the hands of a Hagraven out at Orphan Rock. So you trek out there, kill the Hagraven, pry the blade off her corpse, and head to the Eldergleam Sanctuary. But when you actually start hacking away at the tree, Spriggans come pouring out of the ground and start murdering every innocent pilgrim in the cave. People who came there to pray, just getting absolutely destroyed because you needed tree juice. So naturally, the game offers you an alternative. A pilgrim named Maurice Jondrell tags along and suggests a peaceful solution. Pray to Kinnereth, receive a sapling, plant it in Whiterun, and nobody has to die. Beautiful. You feel great about yourself. You chose peace. You protected the pilgrims. You're basically a saint. But here's where it gets funny. The reward is exactly the same either way. Identical. You get Nettlebane, you get a restoration skill point, and Danica gives you the same lukewarm thank you regardless of which path you chose. She actually protests when you hand her the sapling, claiming she can't run the temple without seeing the original tree bloom. Then she just accepts it anyway. All that drama for nothing. The players who went full lumberjack and let the Spriggans massacre a group of innocent worshippers, they got exactly what you got. Zero difference. Skyrim literally trolled you for caring too much about a tree, but at least this one only stings your pride. The next decision on this list can get an innocent person thrown in prison while a serial killer walks free. Accusing the wrong person. Blood on the Ice is Skyrim's attempt at a murder mystery, and honestly, it's one of the few quests in the entire game that will actually punish you for being impatient. Most quests in Skyrim don't care how you get to the finish line. This one does. Here's the setup. Women are being murdered in Windhelm, and you're tasked with figuring out who's responsible. The game gives you clues, witnesses, and a trail of evidence scattered across the city, but it also gives you Wunferth the Unliving, a court mage with a reputation for necromancy, a creepy demeanor that screams guilty, and a suspicious amulet connected to the crime scene. He is literally designed to absorb your accusation. Every single detail about this man is a red herring, and most players fall for it immediately. If you go to the steward and accuse Wunferth without finishing the investigation, the guards arrest him on the spot. Case closed, justice served. Except it's not, because while Wunferth sits in a jail cell, another woman turns up dead in the streets of Windhelm. The murders didn't stop. You got the wrong guy, and the game makes sure you know it. The real killer is Calixto Corium, the seemingly harmless museum curator who's been hiding in plain sight the entire time. He's been murdering women and harvesting their body parts to perform a necromantic ritual to resurrect his dead sister, and he continued doing exactly that while you had an innocent man locked up. But here's where it gets worse. The quest doesn't break. It doesn't lock you out. You can still finish it, and that's almost crueler than if it just failed entirely, because now you have to walk back into that prison, look Wunferth in the face, admit you were wrong, and release him, all while knowing that your impatience directly costs someone their life. Most games would just pretend nothing happened. Skyrim forces you to sit in the consequences of your failure and then clean up your own mess anyway. It's genuinely one of the smartest quest designs in the game, but if you think wrongly accusing a mage is bad, wait until you hear what happens when you snitch on a certain jester. Snitching on Cicero. You're walking down the road near Whiterun, minding your own business, and you stumble across a jester standing next to a broken wagon with a coffin on the back. He's talking to himself. He's giggling. He claims the coffin contains his dear, sweet mother, and he desperately needs help getting the wheel fixed so he can deliver her body to its final resting place. Everything about this screams, do not trust this person. His name is Cicero, and the game gives you two options. You can either convince the nearby farmer, Vantus Lorius, to help fix the wagon, or you can report Cicero to the guard patrolling the road. And honestly, reporting him feels like the responsible thing to do. The guy is clearly unhinged. He's transporting a suspicious coffin through the countryside while dressed like a court jester from a nightmare. Any rational person would flag that behavior immediately. But here's where it gets dark. Days after you report Cicero and the guard hauls him away, Vantus Lorius and his wife Kerwi turn up dead, both murdered. Whether Cicero escaped and did it himself or the Dark Brotherhood sent someone to handle the situation as payback for his imprisonment, the result is the same. 2 innocent people are wiped out because you pointed a finger at a weird guy on the road, and the guilt doesn't stop there. If you later join the Dark Brotherhood, you'll meet Cicero again at the Sanctuary. He remembers you. He remembers exactly what you did. He won't attack you or block your progress through the quest line, but he makes sure you know he hasn't forgotten. That resentment sits in every interaction you have with him going forward. Here's the thing that makes this decision sting even more. The quest, Delayed Burial, is entirely missable. Players who move quickly from Innocence Lost into the Brotherhood questline never encounter Cicero on the road at all. The whole encounter exists almost exclusively to flesh out Cicero as a character and to punish players who act against him before they understand who he is. You didn't stop a criminal. You got 2 people killed. And the jester you turned in? He's now your coworker, and he knows what you did. But if handing over a jester has consequences, wait until you hear what happens when you hand over an Elder Scroll to a librarian. Selling the Dragon. Elder Scroll to Urag. This one isn't a moral failure. It's not a betrayal. It's not even a bad call. It's the game punishing you for being organized. Here's what happens. You spend hours working through the main quest line, you retrieve the Elder Scroll from Blackreach, you use it at the Throat of the World to learn Dragonrend during Alduin's Bane, and then it just sits in your inventory. This massive, legendary artifact that literally bends time, weighing 20 pounds and doing absolutely nothing. You can't read it again. You can't use it for anything else. It's dead weight. So you do what Skyrim has trained you to do since the moment you picked up your first iron dagger. You sell it. Urag Groshub at the College of Winterhold will happily take it off your hands for 2,000 septims. And honestly, that feels like a win. You just made gold off a quest item. You're a smart, efficient dragonborn who doesn't hoard useless junk. Congratulations. But here's where it gets annoying. The moment you start the Dawnguard DLC and reach the Unseen Visions quest, the game asks you for that exact Elder Scroll. Not a different one, not a copy. That specific Dragon Elder Scroll you sold 40 hours ago because you thought you were done with it. And now you have to go crawling back to Urag and buy it back for 4,000 septims, double what he paid you. You sold a legendary artifact for 2,000 gold, and now the same librarian is charging you 4,000 to get it back. You can talk him down to 3,000 if you haven't become Archmage yet, but either way, you're losing money on a deal you never should have made. That's a net loss of at least 1,000 septims, potentially 2,000 just for being tidy with your inventory, but the financial hit isn't even the real punishment. It's the inconvenience. Your mid-Dawnguard content, deep in Vampire Lord politics and Soulcairn nightmares, and suddenly you have to pause everything, fast travel to Winterhold, and hope you actually have thousands of gold on hand. If you don't, now you're selling random swords and potions to scrape together enough coin to rebuy something you already owned at a markup. The game gave zero indication that a DLC released after the base game would need this scroll. Zero. There's no warning, no hey, you might want to hold on to this. No tooltip, nothing. Skyrim spent 100 hours teaching you to liquidate anything you don't need, and then it punished you for listening. Nobody lost their save over this. Nobody rage quit, but every single player who sold that scroll felt the exact same thing when Dawnguard asked for it back. A slow, quiet frustration aimed directly at their own past self. And honestly, that might be the most Skyrim emotion there is. But if you think a minor inventory inconvenience is the worst thing Markarth has to offer, wait until you hear about the cannibal cult hiding underneath the city, siding with the cannibals. Let me be honest with you. This is one of those quests where the game actively dares you to be a terrible person and then punishes you for taking the bait. The taste of death starts innocently enough. You're poking around the Hall of the Dead in Markarth when a woman named Iola approaches you with a proposition. She worships Namira, the Daedric Prince of Decay, and she needs your help with something. That something. Luring Brother Verilus, a priest of Arkay, to the shrine of Namira under completely false pretenses. You convince this innocent man to follow you into a cave where a group of cannibals is waiting, and then the game asks you to murder him and eat his corpse during a full cannibalistic feast. Here's where it gets complicated. A lot of players committed to this. They figured crossing a line this extreme had to come with some kind of massive payoff, a secret quest line, unique dialogue, some hidden Daedric reward that justified the absolute horror of what they just did. But no, the reward for participating engaging in ritual cannibalism is the Ring of Namira. And the Ring of Namira grants you the ability to feed on dead human bodies for 50 bonus stamina and health regeneration that lasts 5 minutes. 5 minutes. For eating people. That's it. That's what you sold your soul for. A temporary stat buff that you could replicate with a decent potion. The ring isn't game-changing. It isn't even particularly good compared to other Daedric artifacts. It's a novelty item with a horrifying entry cost. But the real punishment isn't the mediocre ring. It's everything after. Multiple NPCs in Markarth become aware of what you did. Merchants and citizens make references to your participation in the cannibal cult for the rest of your playthrough. You don't just carry the guilt, you carry the social consequences people know, and they don't forget. Now, there is a betrayal path. You can turn on Namira's followers during the feast, save Varulus, and walk out with a clean conscience. He'll even thank you with a leveled amount of gold and an amulet of Arche for your trouble. But let's be real. A handful of coins and a basic amulet versus an entire Daedric artifact? The game still punishes you for doing the right thing, just less obviously. You get pocket change while the cannibal path gets a unique ring. Morality in Skyrim pays like a part-time job. The crushing reality is that Skyrim offers zero hidden payoff for crossing this particular moral line. No secret ending, no special recognition, just persistent NPC side-eye, and a ring that isn't worth the inventory slot. Players who expected the game to reward transgression with something meaningful got the exact opposite. A mediocre piece of jewelry and an entire city that looks at you like you're a monster because you are. But if siding with the cannibals sounds bad, wait until you hear about the quest that asks you to personally sacrifice your best friend to a Daedric prince. Sacrificing a follower to Boethia. This one hurts differently than the others on this list. Not because the quest is hard, not because the reward is bad, but because the game makes you do something genuinely awful to someone who trusted you. And then it tells you it didn't even matter. Here's how it works. Boethia's calling triggers once you hit level 30 and find a book called Boethia's Proving. The quest sends you to the Cecellum of Boethia, where a priestess explains what the Daedric prince requires. You need to bring a follower to the Pillar of Sacrifice, someone who has traveled with you, fought beside you, and trusts you completely, and then you need to kill them. The mechanics are deliberately cruel. You tell your companion to interact with the pillar. They walk up to it, no questions asked, because they trust you. Then they become magically immobilized, trapped, unable to fight back, and the game waits. It doesn't do it for you. You have to draw your weapon and execute them yourself. Whatever follower you brought was a choice. Maybe it was Lydia, because she was convenient. Maybe it was someone you actually liked. Either way, they followed you into a place they'd never been, touched something you told them to touch, and died because you decided a Daedric prince's approval was worth more than their life. After the murder, Boethia possesses your follower's corpse and commands the surrounding cultists to fight to the death. You survive, prove yourself worthy, and then Boethia sends you to Knife Point Ridge to kill her previous champion. You fight through the bandit camp, put down her former chosen, and loot the ebony mail from their corpse. A genuinely powerful heavy armor piece with a unique poison cloak enchantment. Solid reward, worth keeping, but here's where it gets dark. You murdered someone who trusted you for a Daedric prince who cycles through champions like they're disposable. The guy you just killed at Knife Point Ridge, he was you. He did the same thing. Sacrificed someone, proved himself, got the armor, and then Boethia moved on the second someone newer came along. That's your future. And the worst part? There's an alternative path most players never discover. You can complete the quest by killing the cultists already at the Cecellum without ever sacrificing a follower. Same progression, same ebony mail at the end. The cost of getting it through murder was entirely optional. But if you think sacrificing a stranger to an indifferent god is bad, wait until another Daedric prince asks you to murder the one person actively trying to save an entire town from eternal nightmares. Killing Erandur. Erandur is one of the most genuinely good people in all of Skyrim, and most players murdered him without a second thought. Here's the setup. The quest-waking nightmare takes you to Nightcaller Temple outside Dawnstar, where the entire town has been suffering from horrific nightmares caused by the Skull of Corruption, a Daedric artifact belonging to Vermina. Erandur, a Dunmer priest of Mara, volunteers to help you fight through the temple and destroy the skull at its source. He's calm, he's helpful, and he genuinely wants to save people. But here's where it gets complicated. Erandur wasn't always a priest of Mara. He used to be a priest of Vermina. He was part of the very very cult that brought the Skull of Corruption to Dawnstar in the first place. He participated in rituals, served a Daedric Prince of Nightmares, and was complicit in everything that cult did. At some point, he defected. He walked away from Vermina's service, devoted himself to Mara, and spent years, actual years, atoning for what he'd done. And then, right at the moment he's about to destroy the skull and complete his redemption, Vermina herself appears in your head and tells you to kill him, take the staff, claim the power. The temptation isn't random either. The Skull of Corruption deals 20 points of damage on its own, but if you collect dreams from sleeping people, it powers up to 50 points of damage. That's a genuinely powerful weapon, especially early in the game. So there's a real mechanical reason to betray this man. But here's the kicker. If you spare Arandur and let him destroy the skull, he becomes a permanent follower. He's a competent mage companion with unique dialogue and one of the more interesting backstories of any recruitable character in the game. Players who killed him traded a redeemed man with a fascinating history for a staff that requires you to creep around stealing dreams from sleeping people just to keep it charged. The philosophical question Skyrim accidentally asks here is one it rarely has the depth to pose. Does genuine repentance earn forgiveness, or do past atrocities define someone permanently? The community is still split on this. Some players argue that Arandur's history with Vermina's cult means he deserved death, regardless of how much he changed. Others point out that killing a man in the middle of his final act of atonement is about as morally bankrupt as it gets, and the regret almost always hits later. You swing the Skull of Corruption a few times, realize you need to absorb dreams from sleeping people to keep it at full power, and suddenly you're standing there thinking about the companion you could have had instead. But if you think betraying one reformed priest is bad, wait until you hear about the time Serana offers to turn you into a vampire, and you actually say yes. Becoming a vampire in the Soul Cairn. The Dawnguard DLC presents you with what looks like a straightforward choice. To enter the Soul Cairn, Serana offers to partially soul trap you, which lets you pass through the barrier. Simple enough, but there's a catch. That soul trapping slaps you with a debuff called Weakened Soul that drains 45 points from your health, magicka, and stamina the entire time you're inside. And for a realm filled with hostile spirits, bone men, and a dragon named Durnavir, losing 45 points across all three stats is brutal. So, naturally, players panic. They see the debuff, they see Serana standing right there, and they remember she's a vampire lord who can turn them. The logic seems obvious. Why get soul trapped when you can just become a vampire and waltz right in? Here's the problem. Becoming a vampire doesn't remove the weakened soul debuff. It doesn't counteract it. It doesn't interact with it at all. You've just added vampirism on top of the existing problem. Now you're dealing with reduced stats and sunlight penalties, NPC hostility if you forget to feed, and the constant micromanagement of a condition you never needed in the first place. You solved nothing. You made everything worse, and the real kicker? There's an actual fix waiting for you inside the Soul Cairn itself. Valerica, Serana's mother, can point you toward a soul gem hidden in a chest beneath one of the master crystals. Grab it, and the weakened soul condition disappears completely. No vampirism required, no debuff, no consequences. Just a clean fix that the game barely tells you exists. That's the core of the frustration. Most players never find this solution on their first playthrough because the game does an absolutely terrible job communicating that it's even an option. There's no quest marker pointing to it, no dialogue prompt that screams, hey, maybe don't become an undead creature of the night over this. So thousands of players voluntarily contracted vampirism, spent hours dealing with the feeding mechanics and sun damage, then had to track down Phalion and Morthal or rejoin the companions just to cure themselves. All to solve a problem that had a simple answer sitting in a chest. It's the perfect example of a fix that breaks more than it repairs. You see a problem, you grab the first solution that presents itself, and you end up juggling two conditions instead of one. At least vampirism is curable though. The next entry on this list involves a permanent loss that no amount of backtracking can undo. Killing Barbas for the Rueful Axe. The Rueful Axe is the most successful bait item in Skyrim history, and I can prove it. Here's the setup. The Daedric Quest. A Daedra's best friend has you meet Barbas, a talking dog who is actually the companion of the Daedric prince Clavicus Vile. Barbas has been separated from his master, and he needs your help getting back. So you agree, because he's a dog, and you're not a monster. You travel together through an entire dungeon, fight enemies side by side, and by the time you reach Clavicus Vile, you've spent a solid chunk chunk of time with this mutt following you around. Then Clavicus Vile gives you the choice. Return Barbas to him and receive the mask of Clavicus Vile, or use the rueful axe to kill Barbas right there and keep the weapon for yourself. The axe sounds incredible. It's a Daedric weapon. It has a name. It looks imposing. Every instinct tells you that the cool named axe must be the better reward. It's not. It's not even close. The rueful axe deals a measly 20 points of stamina damage. That's it. That's the big enchantment. By the time most players reach this quest, they're already carrying weapons that outperform it in every category. Meanwhile, the Mask of Clavicus Vile reduces vendor prices by 20%, adds 10 points to Speechcraft, and increases magicka regeneration by 5%. It's useful for literally every build in the game. The axe is useful for nobody. But here's where it gets really painful. Killing Barbas permanently disqualifies you from the Oblivion Walker achievement. This is the achievement that requires you to collect every Daedric artifact in the game, and it's already one of the hardest achievements to complete because of how many quests you need to finish correctly. The Rueful Axe does not count as a Daedric artifact. Let me repeat that. You kill the dog, you get a worse weapon, and the game doesn't even give you credit for completing a Daedric quest. You lose twice with a single swing. The manipulation is honestly brilliant in the worst way possible. Clavicus Vile is literally the Daedric prince of bargains and trickery, and the quest is designed so that he tricks you, the player, into making a terrible deal. You trade a companion you've bonded with for an axe that belongs in a display case at best, and countless completionists have reported having to restart their entire achievement run because of this one decision, made in a split second at the end of a quest that deliberately set them up to fail. Clavicus Vile got exactly what he wanted, and you helped him do it. But if choosing the wrong Daedric artifacts sting, wait until you pick the wrong side of an entire civil war. Joining the Stormcloaks. Ulfric Stormcloak is one of the most compelling characters in Skyrim. He's charismatic, passionate, and fighting for something that sounds genuinely noble, freedom for the Nord people. He watched his homeland get sold out by a dying empire that banned the worship of Talos just to appease a group of elven supremacists. When you stand in the Palace of the Kings and hear him speak, it's hard not to want to pick up a sword and fight for Skyrim's independence. And that's exactly the problem, because the Stormcloaks are a trap, not a gameplay trap, a geopolitical one. And by the time most players figure that out, they've already won the Civil War and handed the actual enemy everything they wanted on a silver platter. Here's the thing, the moment you join the Stormcloaks, every Imperial camp and fort in Skyrim becomes immediately hostile. That means lost fast travel points, lost shelter, and lost access to Imperial merchants and resources for the rest of your playthrough. That alone is annoying, but the real damage isn't mechanical. It's buried in the lore. The Thalmor, Skyrim's actual long-term existential threat, don't just tolerate the Civil War, they actively benefit from it. A weakened empire is an empire that can't resist the Aldmeri Dominion's next move. The Civil War bleeds both sides dry while the Thalmor sit back and watch, spending zero resources to achieve their strategic objectives. The Stormcloak Rebellion isn't a problem for the Thalmor, it's a gift. And Ulfric, the game's own dossiers found inside the Thalmor embassy during the main quest, classify him as an asset, not an ally, an asset. Someone whose actions, whether he knows it or not, serve Thalmor interests. Players walk into the embassy, read that document, and suddenly the entire Civil War looks different. The Stormcloak ending feels satisfying in the moment. Skyrim is free. The Empire is driven out. Ulfric sits on the throne. But zoom out even slightly and the picture is devastating. An independent Skyrim, exhausted from civil war, with no Imperial military support, standing alone against the most powerful magical empire on the continent. That's not a victory. That's a death sentence with extra steps. The regret here is almost entirely narrative, but it hits harder than most mechanical punishments ever could. Players thought they were fighting for freedom and Nordic identity. The lore reveals they were probably functioning as unpaid agents of Aldmeri Dominion grand strategy. That delayed realization, that slow understanding that you were manipulated by a faction's surface-level appeal, is why experienced players overwhelmingly choose the Imperial Legion on subsequent playthroughs. You didn't liberate Skyrim, you isolated it. And somewhere in the Somerset Isles, the Thalmor are smiling. But if siding with the wrong faction stings, wait until you hear about the players who destroyed an entire quest line because they thought they were being heroic. Destroying the Dark Brotherhood. 3,000 gold. That's what the game gives you for making one of the most catastrophic decisions in all of Skyrim. And the worst part? You'll feel like a hero when you do it. Here's how it happens. During with friends like these, you wake up in an abandoned shack with 3 hooded prisoners and Astrid standing behind you. She tells you someone in the room has a contract on their head, and you need to kill one of them to leave. The quest is deliberately structured to make you feel trapped, forced into committing murder for a faction you never asked to join. So naturally, a lot of players do what feels right. They turn around and kill Astrid instead. And honestly, it feels amazing. You just refused to play a murderer's game. You stood up against a secret assassination cult. You're the Dragonborn. Nobody tells you who to kill. But here's where the trap closes. The game rewards your moral stand by directing you to Commander Marrow of the Penitus Oculatus, who congratulates you and hands you 3,000 gold to go wipe out the rest of the Brotherhood. You clear the sanctuary, kill every assassin inside, collect your reward, and that's it. Quest complete. The Dark Brotherhood is destroyed, except you just locked yourself out of one of the best quest lines in the entire game. Permanently? Let me break down what that 3,000 gold actually cost you. You lose the entire Dark Brotherhood quest line, which includes some of the most memorable missions Bethesda has ever designed. You lose Shadowmere, one of the best horses in the game, a mount with a massive health pool that regenerates and respawns after 10 days even if killed. You lose the ability to summon a spectral assassin. You lose the ancient shrouded armor set. You lose Muri as both a follower and a marriage candidate. And you lose access to Radiant assassination contracts that can easily net you over 20,000 septums over the course of a playthrough. 3,000 gold. For content worth tens of thousands of septums and dozens of hours of gameplay. And here's what pushes this decision into the upper tier of worst choices in Skyrim. It's irreversible. Completely, permanently irreversible. Most mistakes in this game can be walked back somehow. You can cure vampirism, you can switch allegiances, you can reload and try again. But once you complete, destroy the Dark Brotherhood, that door closes and never reopens. There is no second chance. The Brotherhood is gone, and every piece of content attached to it vanishes with it. Players who make this choice on their first playthrough almost universally report it as one of their biggest regrets across any Bethesda game. The community consensus is essentially unanimous. The math doesn't work, the morality doesn't pay, and the game practically designed the quest to punish you for doing the right thing. But if destroying an entire faction for pocket change sounds bad, wait until you hear about the decision that turned the entire Skyrim community against itself for over a decade, killing Paarthurnax. This is the one. The decision that haunts more Skyrim players than every other entry on this list combined. Near the end of the main questline, after Paarthurnax has served as the leader of the Greybeards, taught you the way of the voice, helped you understand the Thu'um, and personally guided you through the entire Alduin conflict, Delphine and Esbern walk up and deliver an ultimatum. Kill Paarthurnax. No negotiation. No alternative. Kill the dragon who just helped you save the world, or the blades cut you off entirely. And here's the thing. The reward for obeying them is genuinely insulting. You permanently lose the ability to change your shout meditation bonus from Paarthurnax. Whatever you had selected before, that's locked in forever. In exchange, you get blade support for dragon hunting radiant quests and Esbern's potion, a permanent buff against dragon damage. That's it. Radiant quests you don't need, and a potion that solves a problem most players have already outgrown by the time they reach this point in the story. The trade is so lopsided it almost feels like the game is daring you to say no, but the real cost goes way deeper than mechanics. Kill Paarthurnax and the Greybeards essentially disown you. They refuse to help you, refuse to locate words of power, and treat you with open contempt. And because of that, you permanently lose the ability to broker the Civil War Peace Summit in Season Unending, a quest that literally requires the Greybeards' cooperation at High Hrothgar as neutral ground. One decision, and an entire diplomatic questline vanishes. It gets worse. Players who kill Paarthurnax also lose a specific epilogue sequence where he explains his plan to spread the way of the voice among other dragons, teaching them restraint and coexistence as a path toward lasting peace. That single scene reframes his entire arc. Without it, you're not just killing a dragon, you're erasing a future that Skyrim never gets to have. And the institution demanding this? The Blades. Two people hiding in a cave, clinging to an ancient grudge, asking you to execute the one dragon who chose to betray his own kind and spend thousands of years meditating on a mountain to prove he had changed. The faction making the demand is one of the weakest, in the entire game. The target is one of the most compelling characters Bethesda ever wrote. The community response tells you everything you need to know. The Paarthurnax Dilemma mod, which allows players to convince the Blades to spare him, became one of the most downloaded Skyrim mods in history. Millions of players independently looked at this choice, said no, and rewrote the game themselves. When a modding community that large agrees that a decision needs to be undone, that's not a difference of opinion. That's a verdict. Paarthurnax's death might be Skyrim's one genuinely unfixable emotional mistake. The kind of decision that sits with you long after you close the game, long after you start a new character, long after you tell yourself it doesn't matter because it's just a video game. Unless, of course, you count on the modding community to fix it for you. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every Skyrim follower explained and ranked, click the video on the screen now.